The many copies of you. You open a dashboard and see yourself reduced to checkboxes, a score, and an incomplete label, and then spend a week in meetings trying to correct a record that won't accept your story. The cost isn't just time, it's the feeling that your life is being edited by forms you didn't design. When every institution stores a different version of you, your identity becomes a negotiation between databases. Not because people intend to misrepresent you, but because systems are built to make decisions at scale, and decisions require categories. So the you that gets approved, flagged, verified, or denied is often not the you who lived the day. It's a version shaped by what the institution can measure, what it must comply with, and what it is rewarded for processing quickly. This is how a gap opens. Lived experience keeps moving, but institutional representations update in bursts through portals, uploads, and waiting periods. And over time, that gap becomes a quiet pressure on dignity. You start to relate to yourself through what the systems will recognize. The mechanism is simple and relentless. Institutions need stable identifiers to reduce uncertainty. A record is not primarily a story. It is a tool for risk management, accountability, and throughput. The incentive is clear: fewer exceptions, faster processing, cleaner audits, lower liability, smoother handoffs. A profile that fits the schema moves through the pipeline. Who benefits? The institution benefits from predictability. Staff benefit from clear rules that protect them. The checklist says yes or no. Vendors and platforms benefit when their formats become the default, because every additional integration deepens dependence. Even the broader public can benefit when consistent records prevent certain kinds of fraud and enable access at scale. Who bears the cost? The person whose life does not fit cleanly into the fields bears it first. So do the people who must translate themselves repeatedly, the ones correcting addresses, disputing histories, reconciling names, proving relationships, explaining gaps. Frontline workers also bear costs. They become the human interface between a living person and a rigid template, absorbing frustration while having limited authority to change the data. There is always a constraint. One explicit constraint is that most systems cannot store ambiguity well. They require a single current value where life may have multiple truths, more than one language, more than one household, more than one form of work, more than one timeline. Another constraint is interoperability. Each institution's database must match its own internal logic and legal obligations, so it cannot simply accept someone else's definitions without risk. The result is duplication, many sources of truth, each claiming authority within its domain. The trade-off is between speed and recognition. The faster a system must move, the more it relies on standardized categories. Standardization can expand access for many, but it can also erase nuance for some. A second trade-off sits between privacy and portability. The more data travels, the easier it is to reconcile identity across institutions, but the higher the exposure when data leaks or is misused. Now add the feedback loop. When decisions are made from records, people learn to optimize for the record. They upload what the portal accepts, phrase themselves in the approved vocabulary, chase credentials because credentials are legible. Institutions then see these signals and reinforce them. The profiles that match the model receive faster approvals, better offers, fewer questions. Over time, the system trains attention away from the inward complexity of a person and toward the outward compatibility of a profile. This is not only about accuracy, it is about power. The profile becomes a proxy, and the proxy begins to stand in for the person in rooms they cannot enter. Intent is not impact. In a world of fragmented records, dignity is not only about being treated politely. It is about being recognized as more than what a form can hold. When a version of you circulates without your ongoing consent, copied, scored, inferred, your agency can narrow in subtle ways. You start to anticipate the system's interpretation and pre-edit yourself. You may feel responsible for errors you didn't create, yet unable to correct them, because the pathway to correction is itself gated by the same record. Responsibility also gets redistributed. Institutions can point to policy, to software, to the data, as if decision-making were a natural force. Individuals can feel pressured to treat their own identity as a product, maintain the profile, protect the score, keep the narrative consistent across platforms. But identity is not merely a data management task. It is the lived continuity of a person over time, with context and relationship. Attention is the hinge. What you attend to becomes what you believe counts. When notifications and status labels become the loudest voice about who you are, eligible, verified, flagged, incomplete, meaning begins to bend toward what the system can reward. Name the cost, not just the benefit. Notice the moments when you are asked to introduce yourself through a drop-down menu rather than through conversation. Consider which version of you is being used to make decisions. An old address, a missing credential, a default category, an inferred risk score, and how hard it is to even see that version. Name the distance between your lived experience and your institutional representations, where it is small and helpful, and where it becomes a harm. Notice, too, how easily responsibility evaporates into the phrase, "that's what the system says," and how easily agency shrinks into, "I just need to look right to the database." Consider what it would mean for a system to treat care as a constraint. Not unlimited, not sentimental, but structurally real. Space for correction, room for context, and a pathway for a person to be more than their most recent entry. You are not the sum of your profiles, but your profiles can still decide what doors open. Hold that tension with clear eyes. Responsibility is distributed, not dissolved.